Good morning and welcome to H3TV Today. So today I have a guest where we like to talk about disruption. Disruption happens all the time. But the thing about disruption is life doesn't stop and say, sit down and deal with it for a while. Take a break. Here's a cup of tea. It just keeps going. Life keeps going. And so I'm always curious, how do people deal with disruption? How do they navigate disruption in their business or in their life with hope, health, and happiness? I think when we allow disruption to define us or leave us hopeless or unhealthy or unhappy, well, then it affects every area of our life. So I love to bring people every week to encourage you to say, whatever you're going through, whatever interruption or disruption you face today or this week, there is always hope, health, and happiness on the other side if you seek it. So I love to bring in guests that share their ideas of how they have stayed hopeful, healthy, and happy through their own disruptions. So today, my guest is Randye. Please help me welcome to the stage, Randye. Hey, Randye, thanks for
Hi,
being with me.
Annie. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm great. I love when I get to interview new guests and learn from them. I forgot to say to our listeners, if you have questions or comments for myself or Randye, anytime during the show, put them in the comments. We'll either respond during the show or after. So, Randye, tell us who you are. Where do you live? What do you do? All the good things.
Oh my gosh. Okay. First of all, I've been watching your show and I love the three H's. And for me, a lot of my life is a fourth H, which is humor. So
Mm.
we're the 4-H club here. So I am a hybrid of a bunch of different things, all having to do with language and communication. My career is as a stage actor, as a singer, as a speaker, author. I've been a drama teacher. I've been a director. I've been a playwright and a podcast host, radio personality here in Connecticut, where I live. Everything from the morning zoo type of morning show to currently being what they call on Broadway the swing girl, but in radio it's just I'm on the fill-in bench. So I fill in happily at a local affiliate of NPR. I host everything from news programs locally from NPR to classical music. So my life is kind of a mishmash. I call it a mosaic, and you may not get the pattern until it's all finished. So I, kind of live day to day, and I'm a mom and a grandmother and a wife. And yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. It sounds like a wonderful, eclectic, mosaic life. I love that. So, what I'd really like to talk about always with my guests is when you think of the word disruption, what comes to mind? How do you define just that word disruption? Not even personally, but just the definition.
Disruption is when the rug gets pulled out from under you. That's the way I think of it. It's, in acting, I've chosen a profession where there are many, many disruptions. That is just part of the picture. The show closes, the show never opens, the voiceover job is finished. But disruptions kind of like take you by shock, not necessarily surprise. And I love what you said in one of your past shows that life gets better, but it takes work. And one of the things is to realize, oh my God, this just happened. And a lot of what I do is humor. In fact, I'm so excited. I just started a comedy class last night with Lisa Lampanelli and love it already because humor has helped me cope in so many ways. So a disruption might be for me, 35 years ago, my husband disappeared and we didn't know where he was for 12 years. After a phone call, telling the kids, hey, this daddy, I love you. And then we didn't hear from him again for 12 years. That was a shock and a disruption for sure. So that was a personal one. And, so that's a disruption. The rug gets pulled out from under you and it takes a while to make sense of it and move ahead.
Yeah. I think you said takes you by shock, right? And I always think of disruption takes you by storm in some ways too, right? Like all the interruption becomes disruption when it throws us off course. And so when I started this show was during COVID, realizing everybody was together, separate, dealing with trauma, right? And then it was inspired even more after being hit by the hurricane, which literally was the storm that came and hit my 30-year dream and has left it crashing. But thank you for already touching on, but I wanted to ask you that, Randye, what is a disruption that you think really, and whether it defined your life or not, hopefully disruption doesn't define us, but it defined a season or defined a moment. What's a disruption you want to share with us today? It sounds like you have a big one with a ex-husband or husband or, yeah.
Well, now ex-husband, obviously. I'll touch on another one, which was a career disruption.
Okay.
So after my husband abandoned the family and left us with 2 little brokenhearted kids and a big mystery to solve, which is a story I might go back to, but I was left also with these sporadic actor's income and 2 little kids. So I needed to redefine my life and how to make a living as an actor or similar. And I wound up in a flurry of good luck and hard work as a radio personality locally, which gave me eventually, it took a while, medical insurance and all those things that are really important for a single parent with no child support, medical insurance, structure, and a way to use my gifts without having to be cast in a show.
Yeah.
So that was 17 years of my life. I raised my kids sharing funny stories about my frustrations on the air, which is a great outlet. And we would march in parades and people would go, "How's your daughter doing in college?" So people sort of knew my life was an open book, kind of like comedians do. And through a series of, let's just say, ageism and miscommunication, my contract was not renewed. And that was a shock. When that happens, and again, 17 years at the same station, when that happens, you sort of get, "Hey, you want to come in after you're on the air to our office and we'll have a conversation?" And you go in and they go, "By the way, this was your last day on the air." So that is the way it has to be done. And so that was a disruption of so many things. When you lose a job that is not only your schedule, but your identity at the moment, there's a lot of adjustment to do. What I ended up doing, first of all, was give away every single T-shirt that the station ever gave me. We had a big party and I'm like, "Take this swag, take my mugs, take my I had to kind of like toss out things and toss out part of my identity that was kind of tied up with being semi-famous in the area and redefine. At the same time, I was dealing with a diagnosis of schizophrenia in my son, which is a disruption that happens slowly and dawns on you and changes everything. I ended up using the 6 months to write my first book and launched a career as a speaker talking about mental illness and the effect on the family. So that is an example of a disruption that became a gift I was able to give to others, which I know is how you look at this show, as a gift to give to others. So
100%. I'm reframing everything you're saying because that's just how my brain works. So I'm like, oh, I know why she got let go from the radio station. She was too pretty to be behind the camera, to be behind the wall and not to see her face and bring her energetic brilliance, not only behind the camera, which is what we talked about before the show, is that I like to visually be with people because I can listen better. I can learn better if I can see the face and the body language and the expression. And you have such a great expression. I'm like, that wasn't ageism. That was jealousism. She's too cute to be hiding in the studio. Let's release her to the world. And even your son, and I have so many people in my life dealing with a young adult child struggling with mental health, schizophrenia, alcoholism, drug addiction. And it is so heartbreaking. And yet we need to talk about it. We need to know you're not alone. We need to know it's not your fault, that there's a community, and that you didn't cause it. You can't cure it, right? Whether it's addiction or mental. And that is such a hard thing for my mom because we want to fix them. We just want to fix them and put them all back together perfectly as a little boy that they were. But thank you for sharing that. And definitely we've had some people recently talk about layoffs, and unsurprising ones, from 30 years in a company to 10 to 17. Right. And just, it becomes your identity, let alone, you said something, Randye, that I think a lot of us as speakers on some scale, we are a local celebrity, a small size celebrity, an influencer. I remember when I was in Minnesota still, I'd go out in public and my kids would be like rolling their eyes, like, how does everybody know you? And I'm like, I speak and I do videos, and people are like, how's your dog? And my husband would be like, who's that? I'm like, no, he was on the video with me last week. So you lost not only but I love that you're taking it for good. You lost not only what you thought your career was meant to be,
Yeah.
that there was a better door opening, but you lost that status. And you did a beautiful cleansing thing. Like, we can sit in the sadness, or we can say, you know what, I'm going to let all those t-shirts and cup go, because that isn't who I am, or that's who I was, but I am moving on to something better. And maybe it prepared space for you to be able to be there present for your son, and to write about it, and to know that your work, as painful as it is, will help someone else. And so you have a lot of different ones. I would love for you to kind of pick one, whether it's your husband disappearing, your job transition, or your son being diagnosed, that are all three real disruptions that I know we have listeners that have been through all three of those. Which one do you want to focus on today?
I wasn't sure I was going to pick one. I would say,
Oh, you want to talk about all of them?
I want to talk about all of them.
You can, Randye. I mean, if you feel like, yeah, I think the reason I like people to pick one, and if you want to talk about all three, it's okay. But the reason it's important for you to identify that feeling is, I am looking for our listeners to hear, what did you do in that moment? I think it's like, in disruption, an enormous dark cloud moves above us, and then can move into us and can consume us. And what I'm trying to teach my listeners is, how do you, in that moment, in that season, stay hopeful, healthy, and happy? So you pick whatever you want, if you want to do all three, or how you want to do it. But I want to know, in the midst of the disruption, how did you stay hopeful when it got really hard?
You know, I'm going to go further back to my husband abandoning the family, because it was 35 years ago, but anytime something disrupts you in a major, major way, you have to redefine. And a big part of my message now, and I do speak a lot on emotional intelligence and communication, and the value of engaging with other human beings for maximum impact, not just connecting or networking, which is great, but actual engagement. I got to tell you, last night, this first, comedy class, which I was really like, oh, why am I doing this? I don't want to take this risk. Comedy, that's scary. I sat there and felt, I'm with my people. And I was in a room of people who were like automatically given the space to open up and share their foibles and faults, because that's what comedy is all about, tragedy plus time, right? Mm-hmm. So I just like, oh, this was a great decision. Whatever happens, I just want to have joy. Mm-hmm. When my husband disappeared, there's always a period of shock, and eventually you get to, not why did this happen to me, but what am I going to do about it? What now? It is what it is. It's
can I learn from this?
Yeah, eventually, but you need processing time. Yeah. Like you need, if it's inconvenience, it can be pretty funny very soon. Like, as an actor, we always tell stories about, when we went to answer the telephone, but it didn't ring, and how did we cover for the other actor? And that's inconvenience. Your heel breaks on the way down the aisle. That's inconvenience. I learned on morning radio, that's funny the next day. Things like my kid's in the psych hospital, that takes time. Things like my husband abandoned the family and we don't know where he is, that takes time. But like you said before, you choose to live in bitterness or forgiveness. So the big decision for me was, am I going to be one of those women who blames everything on this alcoholic, had a disease he couldn't control, ex-husband, or am I going to forgive and never marry someone like that again? Sure, but move on and do the best that I can with what I've got, including my skills, including my children, including what's left of my family. And that's where the decision for hope and health and happiness begins. What am I going to tell myself about this story? So I dove in to making changes, to figuring out a budget, to figuring out a way to keep my house, to figuring out a way to soothe my children, to figuring out a way to make a living doing what I was good at and keep my family together.
So kind of, it sounds like for you, being hopeful in the hardness of that was asking yourself, what could you control? What could you control? And then going to, like, I like that you said, I had luck and I had hard work. Because a lot of people are like, you're so lucky. I'm like, let me be really clear. Wealth doesn't just happen and then you go, okay, now everything, you still got to work at it. And so I love that you reminded our listeners you were lucky, but it was hard work. So to me, I think part of how you stayed hopeful, it sounds like, is you decided what can I control? Can't control my ex, can't control alcoholism, can't control the outcome of losing a job, whatever. But what can I control? And a budget is something. So when we think about that, Randye, I think you were kind of preparing about what you could control. How did you use that to help you with your health? Sounds like financial health, you went into that budget. So I love that. What else did you do? Because it's hard. You're right. We can't just have the pain and just laugh at it the next day. It's hard. And so we have to be very strategic and intentional when we're sitting in the hard of how do we move forward. So I think of health as like physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, relational, career, financial. What were some of the tools or steps, or even like how you spent your day to move forward? What were some things you did to stay healthy?
So one thing I've always turned to, and I love that because sometimes you choose the one thing you have some agency over and you do that. Little side story. I was once as an actor cast in a regional theater company in West Virginia. Now, I grew up in New York, and it was a culture shock, literally, to be in the coal mining counties of West Virginia. You know, New Yorkers are like, well, there's New York and California, and then there's the rest of the country. Like, so I was like, okay, here I am on a rocking chair on a porch. This is really interesting. But it was a 7-month contract, which I committed to finish, but I wasn't that happy. And there were reasons for that, but I was finishing it out and doing my best, but I was gaining weight. And because we were playing in schools and eating school lunches, and, I would come home and there was nothing to do. Anyway, I said, you know what? I am finishing this out. That's my decision. I'm going to finish this out and make the most of it and learn everything I can learn. And I've got 3 months left on this contract. The one thing I'm going to do is go to a Weight Watchers meeting in West Virginia and lose this 10 pounds. And even though every day I always try to find something to look forward to that day, like, expect to be delighted.
Yeah.
And there are always good surprises in life too, if you're open to them. And I started going to Weight Watchers meetings in West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia, which was an experience in itself. But I said, the one thing I can do is plan my day's eating, because I'm living with a roommate. No one's cooking for me. Take my own lunches. And at least just controlling that little thing that I could do helped me feel like I wasn't a victim of anything. I was a result of the choices I was making, and it really empowered me. Sometimes even to just, put something on the to-do list, like schedule piano tuning, and then you schedule it and you cross it off. That just gives you this feeling of like, I'm fantastic. I can do anything. So yeah, control what you can and let that be enough some days.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that's an important piece for you. It is for me too. I'm a big lister, and I check off and I make a phone call. I'm just so happy if I check off the list. So speaking of that list in front of me, but I love that you said, what can I control? And then you went to action. That's where that work is, right? So you're like, I'm going to go to Weight Watchers. And that was an experience. You could probably write a book about that. I also envision you rocking in a rocking chair on a porch in West Virginia. And I used to love and read the Jan Karen books. I don't know if you know those books. Oh my gosh. They're just so, they're about a little town somewhere. I can't even think of the name of the town. Can the listeners think of the name of the town? Jan Karen. But anyway, it's about an Episcopal pastor who wants to date, but he's shy, and it's funny. And they always drink sweet tea on the front porch with the rocking chairs. And I just have this beautiful vision of it. But it's a whole series of books. But I love that you went to work and you did something. Like, maybe you can't change everything of your circumstance. Maybe you're not that happy about the job, but you made a commitment. You finished your commitment. You went to Weight Watchers to manage your food so you could take off that weight, or at least keep going forward. So that's excellent. Those are great tips for our listeners. Like, what can you control? Right. Maybe you can't control, if you don't like your job, but you still need it, stay at your job. If you can't control your roommate or your kids aren't what can you control? And I love that you said, here's my one thing: food, Weight Watchers, I can do this. So you said kind of add a fourth H, but really my third H is happiness, humor, laughter is the greatest medicine. I used to own gyms for 12 years. I had 2 gyms. Man, when we could laugh at ourselves and laugh at each other, oh, so rewarding. So how did you stay happy, humorous, and find that laughter in the midst of the hard? And you also pointed out a great thing, Randye. Sometimes that laughter comes quick, and sometimes we got to wait a minute for some healing and some sadness to be released before we can. But what are some of your strategies for finding humor and happiness in the hard stuff in life?
So it always begins, and I actually wrote a second book about this because the happiness movement was so complicated. I would like open these books and go, I can't read 400 pages on mindfulness because I'm a little scattered. So I'm like, give me the script. I'll read the script. And I get to learn a lot also. Behind me, covered by a poster, is my voiceover booth. I narrate audiobooks as well in my spare time, and I get to do a lot of nonfiction. So I have narrated a lot of what my editor calls the terrible spouse series, like how to handle a husband that cheats on you, raising kids that are having tantrums, things like that. So I love to learn, but I'm a big proponent of no big news here. It's not what happens to you. It is what happens to you, but it's also what you tell yourself about it. And so, in looking at the happiness books, there are so many good ones. I decided, it really boils down to words. What words are you going to tell yourself? Because words have power. The way you say them, and it begins with component 1 of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness. What am I telling myself about this? When I got, unrenewed at the radio station, did that mean I wasn't talented, or did that mean they felt they needed a younger co-host? Like, what am I going to tell myself about it? So I realized that it kind of boils down to 7 core phrases that I repeat to myself as needed, and it spells out, because I love me a good acronym, breathe. B is for being. And I just, and several times in a day, I say, just be here now. If my mind wants to wander over here to what I'm going to have for lunch, I'm just like, bring it back, like a horse that wants to leave the stable, gently bring it back. Be here now. And those words trigger other thoughts. For reality, again, didn't make this one up. It is what it is, because it is what it is leads to what do I do now? Instead of why me. I think why me, asking why, if I spent all day wondering why my son got schizophrenia, why my husband left us. Yeah, there are lessons to learn, like don't marry an alcoholic. That's a good one for me that I have followed, and I'm in a happy second marriage. But it is what it is. Now what leads you to action, as you say? E is for, this is huge. E is for engagement, because every single thing I've gotten through with the help of other people.
Yeah, for sure.
And we need each other so much more than social media would have us believe we need each other. In-person exchange of energy,
face to face, hand to hand, heart to heart. Yes,
absolutely there. And that's why AI is here, but AI will never do theater, and AI will never have a friendship circle, and AI will never get on stage and really communicate with hundreds of other people. So that in-person exchange of energy to engage for maximum impact is huge. And the word I just try to remember is we're all connected.
Yeah.
This Vaseline I'm putting on my lips, somebody invented it, somebody made it, somebody shipped it in their truck. Like, we're all dependent on each other, and we have this illusion that we're not. So E for engagement, A for appreciation. This is good. T for trust. That's a big one for me. Like, when I'm laying awake at night, and I do have those nights where I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Is it going to rain? What's going to happen with my son? I try to, the phrase that calms me is all will be well, but just maybe not the way I pictured it. And H is for humor. And my go-to phrase is, isn't that interesting? So isn't that interesting? My grandson threw the remote at the television. Isn't that interesting? So, and it leads you to different kinds of answers. And then the last E is for esteem. I don't know what's going to happen sometimes. And I knew this when my husband left us. I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever happens, I know I'll handle it somehow, even if I need help. So whatever happens, I'll handle it somehow. Soothes me when I need to believe in myself. So that was kind of a big answer for that. But
It
for me,
is a big answer. And I might circle back with you, but I'm a lover of acronyms as well. And I'm glad you said that you do audiobooks. I am actually, my 8th book is right now in production with an audio recorder. I've done my 2nd book myself, and it just was too hard for me, and I couldn't do this one. So I hired someone to do it. But I have a lot of listeners that have books and they want them on audio. So check out Randye if you're looking for that. I also love one of my girlfriends and I, we often talk about the best word exchange is, isn't that interesting? Isn't that fascinating? Rather than that's crazy, that's ridiculous. That's interesting. That's fascinating. And it just allows us to show up with curiosity and with wonder around it. So I kind of want to know, Randye, from you, since you're a lover of humor, and I know sometimes when we're just stuck in our mind and stuck in our perspective, that's why when you were telling your story, I was like, oh, they said your face is too pretty. It's time for you to move out into the world. That's how I reframed your story in my mind, because it is, what is the story we're going to tell ourselves about a circumstance? Here's the circumstance. What's the story? And so if you think like, oh, they must have thought I was too good looking to be behind not see my face. Like it totally, like it's funny, but it's also like engaging and like, oh, I like that story so much better. It's so much more fun. So I know you're a humor lover. You're a humor chaser. So somebody listening is going, Randye, there's nothing funny in my life. Like, you don't know. It is so hard. Everything's falling apart. My business, my family, my everything. Where can I seek humor? Randye, I want you to give them 3 tips of where do we start looking? Like, I'm not that funny and I don't think life's funny. It's hard. And that's all I've known. That's what my family's known, is you're supposed to put your head down and be miserable. Not everybody knows, like you and I, like, I laugh. I mean, I crack myself up. My husband's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, myself. And I think I'm hysterical. He's like, you're so weird. I'm like, I know, but I like me. So where do we start? Where do our listeners start to go find some happy and humor in their life if they're stuck?
I would say the first thing is to hang out with happy people, or hang out with people who can see the funny side of life. And not to be pressured to be funny. I dated a comedian in LA for a while, and going to a party was like sitting in an open mic comedy club, because they weren't even talking to me. They were like, well, I went to the airport and, TSA is really hard. And I'm just like, hello, human being here.
Hello.
So people who can see the funny side of life. And when I became a divorcee, I hung out with divorced women who weren't bitter. If you were bitter, we weren't going out for a glass of wine, but people who could just see the humor in it. It helps to surround yourself with people who choose to see eventually the funny. And so another thing, a very simple thing you can do is to read the comics in the paper, read funny books, watch sitcoms, to enjoy them, not judge them.
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot of sitcoms that are dated. And, I know like Friends has practically no Black people in it, and is very dated in a lot of ways and a lot of the attitudes. But if you can see the humor in what they did, also do fun things. Take an improv class, take a comedy class, try stuff just to play. I don't think we play enough. My daughter had 3 kids in 2.5 years. That's a bit of a disruption, more for her than for me, but I'm a really involved grandma, and they're working on discipline, but I want to support her. And one of the things I do with the kids is improv games, because I was a drama teacher in 3rd through 8th grade for 13 years. And we had so much fun just sitting around the table playing a game. Like, there's a game called Count to 10, where you just try to focus, and without making a plan, only one person can speak at a time. Playing Uno, playing a card game, playing games can bring more laughter into your life. So that's one. Hanging out with people who have a positive vibe and can see the funny with the right timing is number 2. And 3, find joy in your life. Do things that are fun. Try new things. And if you suck, you suck. When I signed up for this comedy class, there was a part of me that's like, what am I doing? This is too scary. I don't want to be a stand-up comic, which I don't, but I want to be a better storyteller. And I said to my friend, a fellow voice talent, that I said, okay, I've decided if I fail, I fail. She goes, don't even talk about that. Like, just say, I want to play.
I want to play.
Yeah, I want to play. And so
And you did say go find fun people. And I was going to say, where do you find them? But I think you gave us some good points. Sign up for an improv, sign up for a comedy class, go watch comedians, go to YouTube and look for comedians. And then you have something fun to talk about rather than just your bitterness or just what didn't work out. And I always say, be careful being around too many Eeyores. It'll bring you right down. So yes, there's time that it's hard, but I love that you said, I've never been divorced, but I know a lot of people that have. You got around divorcees, but not just divorcees that were going to be pissed off the rest of their life and blame their ex. I always ask women, what I work with a lot of women, men too, but when they're like, my ex did this, man, I go, oh, what was your part? Well, I don't even care what he did. I'm talking to you. What did you do? And even how you said, Randye, you know what I learned? I don't want to marry an alcoholic. And I think a lot of times we marry projects and potential and we figure we can fix them. And that's as much about us as about them. That's our self-destruction. So I like all these different ideas. I love laughter. I took an improv class, but it did not work out great for me, but I almost want to do it again because when I got up on the stage, they'd be like, oh, that's sweet. Oh, that's cute. And I'm like, no, I'm funny. When I try, it comes out more like, oh, that's a nice story. I'm like, no, I'm funny. So anyway, I'm going to try it again. So
yeah, maybe a different teacher, maybe someone who's just like, it's when I teach improv, it's about the group. We are going to get this done. We are going to tell a story. We are going to be, and I call it actually, I do this on occasion and, improv for the terrified, because everyone thinks they have to be on Saturday Night Live and you don't, you just have to learn to listen to each other and react. And again, these 7 core phrases are for self-talk, by the way. I know as a coach, you don't say to your clients, hey, look on the bright side. What can you find that's interesting about? Like that is for self-talk and self-discovery. Yeah. You have to let other people have their journey, which is what good coaches like you do, just to, plant a seed perhaps, or ask the right question, right? I'm not a coach, so I don't know, but I'm thinking of how I'd like to be coached.
It's helping them find the right answer. I mean, I love to tell audiences and individuals, like when I get up and look in the mirror every day, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you get to be so good looking? Like, how lucky that people get to be your friend. And what I love about this, Randye, is half the audience laughs and half the audience looks appalled. But then the next question I ask becomes silent. What did you look in the mirror and say to yourself this morning? And what we know about that self-talk, and I'm not a big research, I'm a big life application sort of human, is that if you look in the mirror and you don't like you, why would anyone else like you? And if you say horrible stuff about yourself, whether you believe it or not, your face shows it. Your face walks around like this. And you look pissed off, and it's because you're pissed off at yourself. So when I think, oh my gosh, I'm amazing, which I don't always think, but I work on every day. When I think that, it draws the right people in, it gives me the right clients to work with, it allows me to role model what I want to teach and inspire other people to feel about themselves. And when you like yourself, everything's better. Your work, your career, your attitude, your sunshine on a rainy day, right? And so, yes, I totally agree with that.
And I would like to add to that liking yourself isn't about being perfect or wonderful.
No.
I had 16 years between husbands, and I call it relationship high school because I had a lot to learn. And each frog that I kissed taught me a lesson.
Exactly.
And one thing that was huge for me was realizing that when we love someone else, their little foibles are kind of funny.
Idiosyncrasies
are funny, and yet we can judge ourselves for it. And there was a moment where I went, you know what? Even my imperfections are interesting. So a big obstacle for me was, I don't even know if I want a boyfriend because I have to cook him dinner and I already take care of too many people. I had this expectation that in order to be in a relationship, you had to be a certain way or act a certain way or, be a particular kind of sexual level, whatever. Yeah. And so I started dating who was now my ex-husband, who happens to be 10 years younger than I am, but that's kind of irrelevant most of the time. But I remember we were dating and I said to him, okay, you know what, let's have a conversation because this may be turning into something. And there's a couple of things you need to know about me. You already know I have a son with schizophrenia and that's that. So, but what you need to know is I don't like to cook. So if you think and I said it with humor because I could accept it in myself. I'm not that woman that loves to cook dinner for her husband. And that's okay. That's more than okay. And I said, and I'm an actor. So if I do cook, because I can cook, I just don't want to do it every day. Every day? Oh, seriously, no. So I'm going to order a lot of takeout. And if I do cook, I expect applause. And I expect the applause to happen for 3 days. If you expect a girlfriend who cooks dinner for you every night, you better look elsewhere. And I didn't say it like an ultimatum. It was like funny. And he just went like, my mother never cooked anything. That's fine with me. We can do takeout every night. But it started with me loving even the things that
That's right.
I used to judge.
The
and
messy
worry about.
parts, the complicated, the unique, and it's about the brilliance within all of the complicated. Everybody's messy and imperfect.
Oh boy.
You said something there that I wanted to touch on. I don't know what it was. It slipped from me. What I wanted to ask you is, Randye, what has been really a highlight, a moment in your life when you really did feel like you were soaring, professionally or personally? What was something that really you're proud of and it's had a positive impact on the world, not just on you, but either on your family or your friends or your audiences? What's a moment that's been a highlight where you really saw yourself soaring with your gifts?
I would say a few. A theater night when I'm doing a play I love with people I love and the audience is with us 100%. And you hear the laughter and you feel the emotion. That is when I feel that my work as an actor is important to other people. We help create an experience where other people can share. Also, out of my my work to be the best mother I can to someone with a severe mental illness, I have a podcast. And it's called Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches. And I just reached out to 2 other moms who wrote 2 other books. And we just, why not? We started a podcast. We've got 82 episodes and it's not a moneymaker and it's not going to get us on Oprah, but we're helping people. And every once in a while, when I get an email that says, I felt all alone until I found your podcast, that's a moment where I feel like I'm soaring in some of the things that I'm meant to do for whatever reason. Or, with my son, I say, I don't know. This is who the universe gave me to take care of. Yeah. And that answers the why. I don't know why. I'm not God. I don't understand the world. I'm just doing my best to make it better. So, and, like any speaker, if I'm standing in front of a stage and you feel, or a client or an audience, you feel them, you feel the aha moment.
Yes.
That's when I feel like I'm soaring.
Yeah, I love that, soaring. I was telling a woman yesterday that wants to be a professional speaker, I was saying, my greatest compliment is you've captivated us. We cried with you. We laughed with you. You captivated us. And for that moment, that hour, that whatever of your performance, of my presentation, that they forget about everything else, that they literally set their phone aside. They don't think about it. They don't think about their disruptions or their hurts. They just engage with your presentation, with my presentation. And I'm like, that is my favorite word when people come up and go, you captivated me. Because I think it's like drawing you in on an emotional level to a presence that makes all other sound disappear. I felt like you were just with me. That's so, so beautiful. So I want to know, the podcast is 3 Moms in the Trenches.
Schizophrenia, 3 Moms in the Trenches.
3 Moms in the Trenches, because we have lots of mom listeners that have kids with addiction and mental illness. And I also wanted to say, when I was 18, I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And so, you don't need to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. You need to make a difference in one person's life every single day. And that is why we're here. It's not about Oprah. It's not about all that. It's about being a mom who doesn't judge why, but instead just shows up the best they can. So Randye, it's been such a pleasure to learn from you, to listen to you.
Same
What's
here.
the best way for someone to connect with you, to reach out? Where's the one place that they can find you?
All signs point to my website,
Okay.
randyekaye.com. And my name is spelled, well, you see it. It's got a silent E at the end of both things. So the E for engagement, maybe. I'm trying to figure out, the E for the extra E is for extra engagement. How's that? So Randye Kaye.
E squared for excellent engagement.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down. See, collaboration. I'm the collaboration junkie. I love to collaborate. I just think we're better together. I think we need, sometimes there's introvert to extrovert, and we have different needs, but
Yeah.
for whatever works for you, we're all better together. And especially in COVID, that will help our mental health. So randykaye.com, there are pages for my acting work, my voiceover work, my hire me as a speaker, and my work as an author, and my podcast. It's all there. So
at your website. Yeah, I'm a huge believer. For 7.5 years, I facilitated an in-person 4 hours a month mastermind for professional speakers when I lived in Minnesota. And people are like, we're really going to share how much we get paid and who our clients are. And I'm like, I know, I don't just believe, I know collaboration over competition wins every single time. And we helped each other write books and have amazing websites and just do so many incredible things. Well, thank you for being with me, Randye. Thank you for sharing your humor and your love with our world. Thank you to our listeners. Please remember, you can ask myself or Randye any questions in the comment, and we will follow up with you. We thank you for being with us here today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. Take care.
bye. Thanks.